All right. Hello, everyone. I guess welcome. That's the best way to start this. Um, we're here today to really talk about product ownership. I'm Eb, and I'm Diana, who I'll let introduce herself here in a second. Just wanted to spend some time, a few minutes, talking about what product ownership looks like in the real world. This is a result of a conversation we had on LinkedIn, and it's turned into just unscripted dialogue about this particular topic. But before we go, any deeper into it, let Diana introduce herself, and we'll go from there.
Hey, I'm Diana Alton. I am an Agile practitioner and a product owner. I've been working in information technology for about 20 years and have really gotten interested in Agile and lean software development principles over the last few years. So been following Eb for a couple years on LinkedIn and found out he might be my spirit animal.
You are too kind. All right. Well, I'm Ebenezer Ikone, but most people call me Eb, so feel free to call me Eb. I'm a software engineering leader. I've been doing that. I've been in software for about 2 decades as well. I like to talk about how we build good products and what that process looks like. I'm also big on creating an environment where people find meaning. So I have a YouTube channel called Joy at Work, where I talk about different things about work and how we can be successful. And this will probably show up there as well when we're done with this. So thanks for watching. Hopefully you get something out of our conversation today. So Diana, this all came to be because I had posted, I believe on LinkedIn, maybe a month ago now, or a little bit over that, a thought about the product owner role in most organizations. And I had looked at it from the perspective of how Scrum describes a product owner. Scrum pretty much says that the product owner is responsible for maximizing, if you will, the product, the value, generated by the development team. And the Scrum Guide, for all intents and purposes, positions the product owner as a single individual as well. Talks about they make decisions, and everybody in the organization must respect their decisions. And I kind of suggested that many of the folks I see with the title product owner really don't have those responsibilities or that authority even in the organizations. And I asserted that those folks are not product owners, and that the role they play in their organizations probably still pretty valuable, but that we shouldn't confuse it with the role of a product owner, at least as defined by Scrum or other Agile frameworks that build upon Scrum. So I said that, got a bunch of comments on LinkedIn. You and I, you reacted, I think, in wild agreement and said, hey, this is something that's been bugging you too, and here we are today to talk about it. So let's go. Love to hear your thoughts on kind of my assertion, what you've observed. You play this role professionally, so please share with us.
Yeah, so the product owner role is a really interesting thing because it is outlined in the Scrum Guide, and Scrum Masters and Agile coaches all over the world like to tell people all about how product owners need to be coached. But one of the big things that we forget about is that there is the Scrum Guide product owner role outlined, and then there is reality. So I live a little bit in the real world. I work for Ascend Learning in the ATI Nursing Education Business Unit. Ascend is an education tech company, and we have about 12 different business units. Who knows? We tend to buy and sell business units, so you can hardly even keep track of them. But what I see happening a lot is that companies have decided to embrace giving a job title of product owner to people and trying to have a lot of that job description be related to what's in the Scrum Guide, but they don't understand that really product owner is a product management role, not necessarily just a dev team role. And product management is something that really is not addressed in any of the Agile frameworks or any of the Scrum Guides. So the company I work for was really smart whenever they started investing in product. and decided we need to train people both on product management and on what Scrum and Agile development are. But so I've seen this trend where people like to spray the title product owner all over people. But most of the time, what you're seeing is that business analysts have been converted in job title to product owner, but they don't necessarily have the authority and responsibility for maximizing value. One of the big things that I like to think about is who's actually making key decisions about a product, which can get really complex really quickly in a large environment, right? So, yeah. One of the things that you challenged me on a little bit ago when we were talking before we were prepping for this meeting is, well, people make decisions every day. So a business analyst could say, well, I'm going to pull from this database field instead of that database field. And, does that make that business analyst not a product owner just because they are making decisions? And my take on it is that product management professionals are responsible for clearly understanding what is needed and why it's needed. And they will collaborate with teams on the how to make sure that the implementation will actually work for users, but they're not necessarily deciding how things are supposed to happen. They're not responsible for the architecture. They're certainly not making the code writing decisions. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit. You work in a pretty large organization too.
Yeah, I
One
do.
of the things we talked about was where decisions happen and what type of decisions happen. So what do you see in your organization in terms of product investment or product management type decisions? How those happen? I'll share a little bit of mine too.
Sure. That's I like the fact how you teed us up with the Scrum Guide. Probably assumes a certain kind of organization or certain setup, maybe one team talking to one product person and that's where it ends. But the reality is in many organizations, at least in large organizations, that product management function you just talked about actually spans many individuals, right? So you can have a VP of product with other people reporting to that individual who have people reporting to them, all the way down to, whoever has the quote unquote least amount of responsibility, or maybe the least amount of authority in the hierarchy. Yep. And so it raises a question as to whether the product management function is actually spread across multiple people, right? With everyone making their own contribution to that, to product. And so, for instance, like a VP with the overarching vision of where you want to go, and someone else maybe further in working on a specific product or capability and where it's going to go.
I definitely see that every day in my organization as part of thinking through this whole problem of where decisions happening, where this product management function is happening. I actually outlined everything all the way up from Blackstone, which is the private equity firm that owns Ascend Learning, all the way down into the development team, and really sketched out that there's about 8 or 10 layers of organization that are making decision. When you're way up at the top, when you're looking at like Blackstone, you're seeing that they're making decisions and around how much return do we want on this private equity fund, all the way down to looking at when we get to the VP of product strategy. We go through a few different layers. We hit my business unit's VP of product strategy. He's setting a long-term strategy to align with overall Ascend Learning goals, aligning resources, making decisions alongside our other senior leadership team members about what are we going to invest in terms of product and what does the market say that we need. Then you go a little bit farther down and you look at product managers and product owners, which we have both job titles at my company. Some products have both assigned, some don't, but they'll be looking at maybe like a 1 to 3 year strategy and roadmap at the product management level. And then product owners are looking at kind of like epics and delivery over what are the decisions around what those epics are, how are they prioritized for delivery over the next 3 to 6 months. And our business analysts and dev team members are digging down into what are the stories, what are the details, what database field is that actually going to pull from. All of these things all work together to make a product, and the lines are blurry. When you think about senior leadership levels, they're looking at what's the investment, what are the revenue targets we're trying to hit, what is the margin that we're trying to hit, and they're pushing a lot of that information down. The people in the middle, like leadership within product management, they are accepting that and trying to figure out how to execute on it, but they're also listening to the market, which is something the Scrum Guide does not talk about. It doesn't talk about where requirements and ideas come from, but they're listening to the market and feeding things up to senior leadership and saying, you know what, for 2019, we're not going to go after this, but I feel like we need to be building a predictive model to solve this problem, or we need to be reinvigorating our platform to solve that problem. We do also see a lot of situations where products get extremely complex and there's more than one, product management person in it. I have a product right now that I'm working on for next year that is really going to be a game changer for our business unit. We have 4 product management people working on it. One of them is what I like to call the spiritual leader of the product team that's working together. So I work in data analytics. The product that we're working on is a new content simulation type product. And the content product manager is basically our spiritual leader. But she has a product owner that's working with her on details for the content. And then I, as the analytics product owner, and then another product person that works on our delivery platform, our student and faculty portals, all make up a team that's deciding what needs to happen to have the most complete solution that is delivered correctly, contains the correct content, and is going to provide the most value. So it's not easy. But you have to be flexible to work through it. So this model that a lot of people want to talk through, I call them the Scrum Nazis, like to talk through. There can be only one product owner, everything has to be within the same team, only one person making decisions. It's simply not practical. And that is not how enterprise product is delivered at all. So,
That's really helpful that you explained that and walk through a couple of scenarios of what you have there. What I find interesting is, there are degrees of decision making that occur, right? And someone ultimately is going to decide for this sprint or these series of sprints, here are the things we want to focus on because we think these are the things that get us closest to our goal. And so we could probably begin to suggest that product ownership starts there, right? The person who is saying, in the sprint, multiple sprints, these are the things we want to work on. But the fact of the matter is, in most organizations, that person's also validating their decisions with somebody, quote unquote, higher up in the organization as well, to make sure that the decisions remain in alignment with, the larger goals, right? That's just part of how a lot of these things, in my experience, play out. So in most medium to large size organizations, there is this need to make sure we're in harmony as we progress, that the decisions we're making, maybe at a lower altitude, don't take us too far off track of our larger vision.
I love that analogy of lower altitude. And this whole conversation reminds me of something that a guy that just recently was promoted to a VP of product strategy position in a brand new business unit that we're starting up at my company said to me. He said, product management is responsible for 2 key things. One is managing priorities, and the other is managing politics around all the change that you're potentially introducing. Because we're not just building product with software engineering teams. What we're actually doing is building product that somebody has to market, somebody has to sell. We have people that have to support it. We have to make sure that we're going to make enough money off of it and that we're not spending too much money making it. And that takes way more people than just that little Scrum team that the Scrum Guide likes to talk about.
Yeah. In a future conversation, we should contrast what we just discussed right now with situations where people are doing internal use software, where maybe there isn't a product marketing function. There are people on the floor, so to speak, who are using the systems to get the job done. We can loosely term those as products, but you get the point. It's stuff that's being developed internally that enables the business as well.
Yep, I agree. I think that would be a really great thing to explore, because a lot of the people that get really confused by what product management is and what those types of decisions are and where they can happen, one of the big reasons is that they are working on really important systems that aren't actually sold to anybody.
Right.
So really great.
Right. And so that will be an interesting one to even discuss what a product is. So kind of as we wrap up here, we've kind of described, what we would imagine product ownership to look like in most large organizations. We've kind of probably suggested that, the product ownership it doesn't live in a single person just like that. There are people with different responsibilities and decision-making rights. But, kind of wrapping up, what should we say to those folks who maybe have a product owner title or in that role, but to your point that you made earlier, really don't make decisions around maximizing value? They might be making decisions on how to implement a solution, or they might be helping to bring clarity, but they're not deciding we're going to do this over doing that or things like that. They're really just helping the development team, bring the deliverable to life.
So is your question, what do you tell that person that is a product owner in name only? I think what you tell them
that is my question.
I think what you tell them is that patience is required. One of the hard things for people that work in the technology space is that you can get competency on pure technologies and domain and requirements pretty quickly, but all that business context that's wrapped around what product you're building takes time to learn. I started out as a Scrum Master in the data analytics program at my company, and I worked day to day with the product owner, who was one of those guys that actually was too high up on the food chain to be, quite as involved with the team as we might usually like to see product owners be. But I basically asked a lot of questions every day. I was asking questions, and he was very willing to share context at all time. And eventually I would start proposing things. Now, I was a Scrum Master that knew someday I wanted to go back into product management. So there was a little bit of angling there, to kind of build my street cred within the company.
You had an agenda?
I had a little bit of an agenda because I knew I liked product roles and I would be interested in working in that space in my company. But basically, I demonstrated competence and understanding and interest, and it ended up resulting in a career opportunity a couple of years later to move into the products team. And now I'm working on really contributing to what is that strategic roadmap. So patience, asking questions, and then trying to seek out who the influencers for the product's direction are and building relationships with them. Sometimes it's not who you think it is, but asking for help on that. And just, there's not a reasonable product leader in the world that is going to tell someone that's interested in making a product better that they're not going to help them understand that product more. So that's
well said. I'm not sure I can say anything that even matches that, other than to take your key sentence there, which is to have patience and do the best job you can do in your current situation, and just look to advance your career and grow. So great. Well, thanks. Yeah, I've had fun doing this. Hopefully you had some fun.
I did too. I think we should do it again.
Yeah, I think we should do it again.
So hopefully the people that'll watch this will let us know what they were interested in, and if there's any other product and agile questions that they'd like us to answer.
Yeah. So hopefully the product we made today, we
maximize the value.
Exactly. We maximize value. People.
Yes, I hope so.
People find it useful, and they ask us to make some more products down the road.
Thanks.
All right. Good chatting with you. I'll see you around. Bye.
Nice to chat with you too.